tonight's budget workshop to order. No official announcements. I'm going to take a moment for myself. It is my youngest son's 16th birthday, so I'm going to say happy birthday, Boston.
Happy birthday, Boston.
Thank you all. Thank you everybody for being here. This is, we're putting in some extra meetings. I appreciate everybody making themselves available. The goal tonight is to focus, I think, primarily on the reduction budget. We will start off with some summaries from Evan and Jay of some of the materials they've presented to date. I think then we'll probably move into some QA from both teams, and then open up to public comment once we're done with that. Madam Chair, anything I missed or school committee needs to try and attain tonight, or?
Nope.
Okay. As it pertains to the select board, I would love for us, through the course of this conversation, to provide feedback to the town administrator about what we would like to do about the firefighter position that was posed to us last week, as well as share any feedback about where we think departments need protection, or where he should be focusing some of his reduction efforts. Okay? Shouldn't need to be said, but above all, we will, remain respectful and try and be solution oriented. And with that, I will pass the floor to Evan and Jay.
Thanks. Jay, did you want to start?
I'll be happy to, whatever
Okay.
you like.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just put 3 slides together to provide a brief overview of the preliminary reduction plan for FY27. So we have been working on this. Obviously, it's relatively early in January, but a level service budget right now at just over $50.5 million. The 3 central cost drivers, as expected: salaries, of course, and then out of district tuitions, we've seen a significant increase, and that's going to go up by a little over $881,000 for FY27, and corresponding transportation is going to go up by $231,000. So those are 2 somewhat unexpected increases for FY27. In discussions with Evan, we, in taking this initial stab at a preliminary reduction budget, the schools aimed to get somewhere between $1 million and $1.2 million in reductions. What I'm going to talk about tonight will be, it would total roughly $1,061,000. It's going to be entirely people and positions, and there's simply no way at this point that further reductions will be student programming and class size. There's just no way around that. Okay. All right, so looking back, it was just about a year ago that these 2 committees and the finance committee met, talked about FY27. The select board, with input from those 2 other committees, made the decision not to move forward with an override for FY26. So in lieu of that, we did 3 things. We spent out what we had in circuit breaker reserves, which is kind of your last gasp thing that you do on the school side. We made non-personnel reductions, like the stuff, if you will, supplies, curriculum materials, tech software. That totaled $162,000, and we reduced by 6.5 full-time positions: half-time preschool teacher, an HR director position, a technology position, the 1 math intervention teacher that we had, 1 of our maintenance positions, and 2 of our 4 curriculum coordinators. So in total, just over $609,000 to get us this year, through this year, which we've done. So moving forward, if we have to reduce by, in this, what I'm putting before you is that $1,061,000, it's going to be 7 instructional staff members. Primarily, that's going to be teachers and counselors at the secondary level, and the same at the elementary level. So obviously totaling 14 positions. If we go in a different direction, we only have 4 paraprofessionals in the district not tied directly to IEPs. There are kindergarten paras, and we have 2 at each school. Obviously, if we go that direction, that's going to change the numbers and we'd have more FTE. But this is based on my early thinking with almost entirely instructional staff in the form of teachers, probably one of our two curriculum coordinators and counseling positions. If we are to cover $20,000 for unemployment costs, if all of these folks went on unemployment, that would total 280,000. We'd need to reduce by an additional 4 instructional staff. In the 14, in my preliminary plan, we have 3 retirements. So obviously I know that we're looking at maybe 11 at most receiving unemployment costs going into the FY27 year. And that's what I have.
Yep. All right, we'll have William pull up. I have one slide to review. So the current budget deficit remains at 1,484,000. Been consistent for past several weeks. We got our initial GIC estimate, which is a 10% increase over this year's budget. However, that's a reduction in projected cost because we were being told to budget between 15 and 18% for an increase. So that would reduce our projected cost up to $545,000. We had initially budgeted for 10%, just estimating that maybe where we come in. So it doesn't really reflect any better number towards that 1.4 million. Our Worcester County retirement total number came in at 3.8 million, which is reduction in what we thought we were going to spend by about just under 10 grand. So we have reduced that out of the budget to get to that 1.484. We've talked about getting some direction from the board. I've made some preliminary looks at what our reduction budget would look like. And if we were going to reduce by 425,000 ish, that reduces municipal staff by about 5.5 full-time employees. I want to talk just briefly because this came up a lot at FinCom last week. How did we get to the million versus the 400,000? So no real scientific reason. Jay and I met, decided we'd come up with a starting point because none of these are going to be whole numbers. And so we would get kind of our reduction budgets started, have an idea of what they look like, and then adjust them as needed in either direction based on saving a whole employee or whatever we can do to work together to find where that balance needs to be. So that's just a preliminary look at what that does. All right. And that is the only thing that's different from the last time I presented to the select board or what we presented at the finance committee.
Okay. Who wants to start with the questions?
Hi. So I'm going to start with a question in regards to this unemployment. This is a question that I've been asking, and I'd like to ask it to you, Evan. So I understand that unemployment's different for a municipality versus private sector, and that we reimburse the Commonwealth for the actual unemployment benefits paid out to the former employees. But that seems like a benefit, and in fact, on this sheet that you guys just handed us, there are line items here for unemployment. There's the town unemployment and the school unemployment. So that seems like that's something that would be covered by the town, the municipality side, versus the school side. So I find it very difficult to swallow that we're gonna lose 4 teachers or 4 instructional staff for something that would be covered by the municipality.
So I guess I would have a question for you. What service do you want me to cut to pay for that 280,000?
Well,
It was hypothetical. You don't actually get to pick.
okay.
But that's how it's been done pretty consistently. We carry a line in our budget to deal with unexpected things that come up throughout the year. I believe the school.
We don't have a line in our budget at all for this.
Well, you
know,
have money in your budget, I would assume.
but we don't have that's unallocated. All of our budget is allocated to every specific line. We don't have an unclassified line. We don't have an unemployment line. We don't have a reserve line. You have the school unemployment line on your side of the budget.
Yeah.
My thought was that when we've had these discussions, it's been around when we've been faced with potentially much more significant reductions than we would have typically in any given year.
Yeah, I mean, in addition, like this would be that 140,000 that you're speaking of would be if all of those employees took the full unemployment for 26 weeks. I mean, it just seems a little ahead of yourselves to be cutting for
Yeah,
instructional staff on a maybe.
but just to be clear, I think it's important just to get that maybe out there. As I tried to say, going over those 3 slides, it very well might not happen at all. But if we don't plan for that, or at least talk about it, I think that might be unwise.
Right. Yeah, because if you don't plan for it and it happens, then those are mid-year cuts.
So then what happens, I guess, when an employee is laid off in regards to their health insurance? Don't you reimburse some money from that we are no longer covering their health insurance?
In theory, yeah.
So wouldn't that almost cover this with the unemployment?
Not necessarily. It depends on what else we pick up throughout the year, right? So if we have turnover and you bring in somebody that has a family that previously that position was held with somebody that was a single, that happens half a dozen times and there goes all your savings.
When you bring in somebody, you mean a new employee?
Yeah, so this year, so we're 13 days in the new year, we've had 3 turnovers. So if those people leave and are single folks taking a single plan, and now we get 3 new folks that are all families, you have to have that capacity to be able to absorb that. Again, otherwise, it's a mid-year cut or we have to go back to the taxpayer in some other way in the middle of the year.
But last year we cut 6 employees, and of those, Dr. Cummings stated that only 2 collected unemployment. Do we know what that cost was?
Not off the top of my mind.
I
Okay.
don't know. I know 2 were unemployed. We tried to utilize retirements, and there's 1 shift internally of people. I mean, a year ago we talked about trying to minimize that. We didn't anticipate all 6.
Mr. Jefferson, thank you. This might be jumping ahead, it probably is, but I was thinking, particularly when you were presenting, Jay, and actually you too, Evan, I think it's important when we have this conversation to really also think about the future too, and not think about it just 1 year at a time, because my mind already went to, okay, we cut whatever amount it is, either, I hate saying sides, but in the town, we cut this many positions, then what happens next year? We're still gonna be behind, and what will be left? So I want to be mindful about thinking beyond 26 and 27 when we're having our discussions. I guess that's to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
I believe one of the things that was discussed previously was the potential to use, say, free cash to cover some of the potential unemployment costs. Is that anything that we've received any additional guidance on?
No, Mary and I are working on that guidance currently.
So, can we talk about the free cash trend a little bit? Have you done any analysis in terms of, because our free cash levels have been fairly consistently high compared to historicals by a couple million? Is there any of that money that's been going to free cash that could potentially be deployed for the operational budget that's not sort of clearly one-time money?
So we've swept or raised those revenues by about $500,000. A lot of those drivers of our free cash are one-time revenues. So, for example, you know, what we just closed for free cash, $1 million of that is the building permit for UPS. So you're not gonna have that year over year, so and Mary's the one that did the majority of this work, is really scrutinize our revenues, and we're as uncomfortable as we've ever been with revenues. And I don't think we would wanna go much higher. That would be the only way to decrease your free cash and put that towards operational,
Yep.
and we did that coming into this revenue.
Okay.
Ah.
Got it. Well, I definitely would want to stay away from any one-time money, for sure. And there's nothing, and maybe this is something that, you could consider, Jay, as well. You know, has there been anything where we've used any operational money for things that could qualify as capital? You know, with having free cash, and might be smaller things, 30, 50 grand, I don't know. But, you know, we're in a place where we just need to put everything on the table, I think, right? So I'm just wondering if there's anything like that at all that, over the, you know, past few years, we, I don't know.
So from the municipal side of the budget, we did that 3 years ago. So there's really nothing left in there that I would think is a one-time expense. You know, we moved our tasers out of there, out of operational costs, which there's an argument to be made that is an
Sure.
operational cost because it's a 5-year program. We do our cruisers out of free cash and not the operational budget, which is really where it should live. There's probably one or two other examples that I'm forgetting right now, but that we've culled out and put into the capital plan. The other thing we've done is we've had conversation about anything, you know, up to you know, under $5,000 is not a capital expense. Above $5,000 is a capital expense. But we have had conversations about bundling, you know, projects together. 2025 with what we do for work, there's not a ton of that low hanging fruit
Sure.
left to be had. I know exactly where you're coming from. But we did the heavier lift, I would say, 3 budgets ago with that.
Okay.
At least on our side.
Yeah, we did too. We actually tried to get technology, which
Yep.
appropriately isn't a one-time expense, but we, in conjunction, it did the same exact exercise.
Okay. I have lots of other questions, but I think I'll
Do you want
let
to go
people
ahead?
here.
So, obviously, I know neither one of you are going to want to talk in detail about services, because, you know, you don't want to unnecessarily cause panic or, but I feel like we're going to be a little bit stuck if we can't start prioritizing and saying, like, what's important to us. You know, whether it's town services, whether it's school services. Otherwise, we're just kind of, I feel like we're all just kind of sitting here looking very serious, but not saying, like, what do we prioritize in terms of what we're delivering to the taxpayers. So I guess I don't know exactly what kind of an answer I want, but, you know, has there been any thought into, you know, how we can creatively look at some of the things we deliver to town without causing panic and stress?
So, I mean, I would say yes. I mean, the way I approached it, and again, the board needs to have a conversation about the fire department and where we're going there, and any specific service segments that they want to see, you know, absolutely no cuts to, or however that conversation plays out. So what I did when I was doing my exercise and trying to figure that money out is to just spread the pain, let's say, so that reductions in services kind of hit all service segments, and didn't specifically, you know, impact one area of service delivery specifically. So if you were going to take the balanced approach, you know, there's probably a admin position in this building or something along those lines. I have another part-time position in there. I don't want to, everybody would know what that is. Your positions at, say, the library or veterans or police or DPW, I mean, they'd all take a impact in some way, shape, or form. But it depends on what we're actually talking about would be how that gets shifted. But, I think even with the board's input, all other cuts we'd be looking to spread the impact and not, decimate one area of service.
And is that for whole 425 FTEs?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
The FTE cuts are probably, again, hypothetically, are around 300,000.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. I might, so back to the unemployment, just so that I understand where this lies in the budget. The school doesn't carry any of this. This is kind of under our unclassified area.
That's where the line is.
Yeah.
The line item. Yeah.
Okay. And then I was going to ask, so it sounded like it was two people last year. We don't have the number. I'd just be curious what that number ended up being, like what we incurred for cost on that.
Mary's
Doesn't really change everything, but, so for me, what I've been trying to look at is I've gone through both the budgets, at length. And, obviously I understand that things are lean, but looking at, where is there anything that we can, I mean, that's your job, right? Is like, here's a number and you guys figure it out, in my opinion. But, how much can I ask or can we ask that we reduce? But then additionally, like, where can we find some revenue, right? And I'm sure appreciate that you guys have been thinking the same thing. I know that I looked into the excise, and I know I've talked to you, Evan, about that, and the meals tax, it doesn't seem like we could do anything quite yet, right? Is
right
that-
on the meals tax piece.
Yeah, even the excise, I don't think yet.
Can we could.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I
it hasn't
went down that in the last couple of weeks. I thought that we could, but
Yeah.
we can't. But I do appreciate that you had looked into those numbers a while ago for me. But, so let's say on the school side, so I know school choice, you've talked about that. So thankful to the school committee from many years ago that pushed that and worked really hard to get that in our town. And you've indicated the other night, what is it, $8 million or something that
At
you've seen
least,
over the
yeah.
course of it. So can we, I know any increase or, moderate increases there affect class sizes, et cetera, but could there be a minimal increase in that over the next year or 3 years?
The answer is yes. If we end up having to make significant reductions, the trouble obviously is it's not like you do school choice for a year. Like
Right.
once we accept a school choice
Sure.
student in kindergarten, we have them through graduation no matter what. So that could make, it's kind of a bit of a catch-22 depending on how it plays out. But yes, we could.
So year over year, about how, what does that look like in terms of students that you're having? I understand that you have a wait list right now and you've
Yeah,
had a
we
wait
do.
list, so,
In total, as of today, we have 123 students. We usually shoot for between 10 and 12 per grade level. We've kind of stuck with that. That economy of scale has just worked out really well for us. So we typically bring in about 10 kids in total in kindergarten every
each year, okay. And so say 5 years ago, was that number about the same?
Yeah,
Was it less?
about the same, correct.
Okay,
And the average that we bring in is just over 7,000 per student.
yeah,
It's set at 5,000, but you get a little more for special ed and adjustments. But last year we brought in $906,000.
Yeah.
Which is great.
so again, just an idea
Yeah,
that,
it's a good idea.
do we increase that by one?
Yep.
Another one the next year? Again, I understand that you've talked about, we all know population is increasing, and it's going to be, this is just the start, right? So, I know that you're at plus 133 or whatever, and so I understand you have to take that into consideration. However, if there are some dollars out there and we can absorb a little bit, and it shifts the dial a little bit, that would be great. And then additionally, along similar lines, I guess, is the medically fragile population, which I understand that's been it's gone as you would have expected and maybe even better,
Correct.
you know, is there a small percentage that we could increase that as well?
Possibly, and not with programming, and we're maxed out, but in terms of number of spaces available, for instance, at the high school, that program in particular, we could accept up to 2 more students if that works out.
Okay. And then do you know what those numbers would equate to, or that, I don't mean to put you on the spot right now.
Depends on the student and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
needs,
Yeah,
but
right.
tuition wise, about 100,000.
Okay. So I guess I would be interested in you
Yeah, we
thinking
would too.
more about that.
Yeah, we have exceeded, right now, I think we're at 8 tuition in students.
Mm-hmm.
When 3 was to kind of break even, you know, when we had the discussion last year. So
Yep.
that's a good thing.
Okay. And then lastly, I've brought up sports fees in the past to the school committee, in addition to the superintendent. You know, I see it's a number now. I had to kind of try to find it, but I think it's like 183 or thereabouts for the bus costs relative to sports.
Right.
I'm not sure. I kind of had
I don't know that number off the top of my
Okay.
head, but that sounds
it got switched around. So
certainly easy.
It's
I just threw it out.
$183,990.
Anyway,
Go. All right.
but,
That is on the agenda, on the school committee's future agenda for, I believe, February.
and I've listened to the school committee, and I've listened to you in the past, and I appreciate, you know, concerns relative to participation and whatnot. But, you know, given that there are ways to identify students or families who can't afford whatever it is, and we don't have to go for the full Megillah, but again, it's something that's there, and if we could capture 100,000 there, or whatever it is, I think it's, you know, it's important for folks to, similar to what we're looking at with trash, you know, it's a little bit of an equitable way to raise revenue, so to speak, when you look at the whole population of the town. So I would encourage you, again, to look at that, and not asking you to go for the whole thing this year, but I really think that should be seriously considered by the school department and school committee. The teacher contract rate, should I just keep going, or just some?
Sure.
I can wait, I can spread it around. I'll just go schools, and then I can go to the time set after someone else speaks. Current teacher contract, just so I know, is that through 27?
Correct.
Okay. And in the teacher contract, is that teachers, paras?
No,
Admin?
just teachers, but, well,
Okay.
just teachers. That's actually, I keep saying it, but I'm wrong each time. Counselors, school psychologists, guidance counselors would be in there. That's that group. And then
Okay.
we have separate units for custodial, paraprofessionals, and nurses.
And then admin?
Admin, they're not in a unit, so all individualized contracts.
Oh, okay. And then like BCPAs, they are BCPAs, should say. they're-
Individualized contracts as well.
Oh, okay.
Our BCPAs, a handful of maintenance workers in admin, a couple of the support staff members, like office staff, also are not unionized.
Okay, so the contract that goes through 27, that's teachers and the other,
All 4 are
Okay.
in lockstep where they expire in 27,
okay,
at the end of 27.
okay, thanks. And then lastly, and this might not entirely relate to you, but I know I've heard that there's 2 contracts or 2 unions. What are those 2?
So that
That we're
is
looking at right now.
our administrative union, GMEA, and the library union
Gotcha, okay,
are up
thanks.
this spring.
All right, I'll yield, but I'll come back again. Thanks, Jay.
I have a quick question, I guess dovetailing off that stuff. You know, as we are talking about the reduction budget and reducing staff, are you able to take on additional students in either of those programs, school choice or medically fragile, without expanding staff, or does a staff reduction impact?
In the context in which we talked about it, we could without, like at the high school right now, we have 3 students in that program. We could probably take up to 5 without changing our staffing.
That's the fragile program?
That's right, medically fragile and school choice, although it's, you know, that's a challenge. I'm not gonna say just adding 10 kids, that's gonna bring in $70,000 and save the day. It's certainly not, but could you maybe, get 5 kids and try to identify those levels where there might be a little bit of room, sure.
I have a question. Just to kind of go off of what Anne Marie was talking about, could you pull up the school Jay's presentation there for a second? Just the first slide, which I think was the cost drivers. Okay, so the teacher contract isn't in. Is it on that slide? Am I not?
Nope, our total for salaries, not just teachers, would be an increase of, I think it's, Christie be ready,
I am
two
ready.
million 56,000 and change.
Yeah, 57, close enough.
Okay.
57, that was pretty good.
All right, so that's part of that. It's not on that slide, but that's part
Correct.
of
Those
part of
were-
the cost drivers. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm looking at a FY 27 budget that was given to us from, I think, from you guys.
Okay.
All right. So it talks about instructional increases for $2 million, and that's a 6.09% increase. Okay, so that's what we're looking at for the next school year, right? All right. So, and then when I looked at I'm assuming that's a preliminary budget that you guys put out, because it says it has that 6% increase for the groupings for the teachers at each school. So that's all 6%.
Okay.
All right.
I'm assuming that's 6% average.
Okay, so it's the average is 6% at each school.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's done through the 278 staff members lumped together, and it's just broken out by.
So everybody's getting the same raise.
No.
No.
Nope. So
right.
that's gonna be the average. Right now, we haven't finished it yet, but we're gonna go through and run the actuals as well.
Okay,
as
that was going to be my
Yep.
question. So,
Yep.
what I was looking at, for each school, it's 6%, right on the nose, right? And it's
Yep.
the same with nurses, 6%,
Correct.
and same with 3% for other positions.
sure.
So you're going to go through that
We are.
line item by line item, and because 3% is the increase, and then there's
It's gonna be awfully close.
Okay.
Even when we scrub it, I'm telling you, it will be really close.
Okay, all right, but it would be nice to know,
Oh, sure.
because we're looking for every buck here, right?
Oh, no,
So.
I get it.
All right, so that's coming. So the budget that we have now is kind of preliminary. It's just the
Correct.
first go at it.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Just kind of piggyback from what Anne Marie was talking about with the school choice and the kids. We were trying to keep everything level services so we can keep having those school choice kids come, because if we drop 14 positions, higher class sizes, pushing up to 30 kids, those kids from those school districts might as well go back to, their schools, because that's what they have there too. So I think, we don't want to lose that, and then you're looking at the special education kids who may have to go out of district, which will balloon that number as well. So I think keeping everything level services, we have to.
Just to clarify, the way I'm coming at this is, how do we increase revenue? So I'm not looking at, okay, let's do this reduction budget, and then I'm gonna ask you to add 2 medically fragile kids at the high school in addition to 5 school choice. No, I'm looking at the delta right now is 1.484, thereabouts. How do we close that potentially, so that the potential number for an override ask is a lesser number? And where's the room there? So that's just to clarify for everybody, I guess, I'm not looking to, we're gonna do all these reductions and I'm gonna ask you to increase services. To your point, yeah.
Yeah, so, as we think about priorities, the comments that were just made, I can definitely, relate to those in terms of, for me, one of the most important services to protect is the school department. And a big part of the reason for that, is that we have optimized the special education services. Grafton's known as a town that's and just general education services, which provides that school choice. Both of those things are fragile. So, reductions like last year of 6.5. I think there's a little bit of tolerance for some reductions, but we absolutely have to, over time, we have to protect the school department, because there's a big risk in if we start to see students not doing school choice anymore. That's going to become really problematic for us, and we see with the cost drivers, what was it, 3 or 4 kids that drove 800,000 in out of district costs. The reason that we're able to keep, so I really been racking my brain, because the math ain't mathing for me in terms of how is Grafton, with such a low per pupil cost, doing it with sort of with the budget that we have, because we have reasonable class sizes. So it's not like we have these big class sizes and all of that. It seems like we're on the lower end of the pay scale as you look at the comparable communities. So Grafton pays its teachers a little bit less. We have school choice, which brings in $500,000 to $800,000 a year, whatever it is. That helps a lot, and we keep students in district, which saves us a ton of money too. So, to me, that's sort of the magic sauce that we've had over the years. And any one of those, if things go a little sideways, it is, all of the things we're talking about are important tonight, but if any of those things go sideways, it's going to derail any conversation about fees or adding a medically fragile student or whatever. That just gets wiped out so quickly. So I don't know when the appropriate sort of time frame is to talk about priorities, but for me, keeping schools where we're at roughly, so that we're not putting those things at risk, to me that's kind of a no-brainer, and so for that reason, sort of, I would put schools at the top in terms of the services that we really need to protect, for those reasons, because there's such a big risk to the budget overall. Yes, it's on the school side, but at the end of the day, we collect revenue from taxes, and it gets, it pays for all of the services in town. So, it's not like, if we have 5 students which now need to go out of district because we don't have the staffing to support the special needs that, or whatever needs that those kids have, it's not like that's just going to impact the schools. That's going to be every service in town, because that's what we're looking at with these reduction budgets. It's not segregated to just, it's all the departments. It's how it ends up impacting everybody, because we don't want to decimate any services. I can't point to a service where I would say we could do without that. There just aren't any. So for me, I think that's a really important one to sort of put on the table. I know that's easy to say, but I do think that Grafton is a little bit unique in that way, in that those are the reasons that we're able to deliver education at the cost that we are per student, and it's sensitive to staffing levels, very sensitive, I would imagine. So I just want to say that.
I think that's a great point, and I think to Miss Offen's point previously, thinking in the long term, right? We have our, the projection sheet that's been shared with us, and the percentage increases each fiscal year are very similar. So it's all well and good for us to, try and cut or reduce, and be responsible. And I don't mean, maybe being responsible isn't the right term, because we are quite fiscally responsible, in my opinion. We don't run, frivolous positions and whatnot, but these percentages stay the same year over year. So again, are we going to be prepared to come to the table next year and talk about reducing the schools by another 18 staffers and 5.5 additional full-time employees on the town side? At some point, very soon, these cuts are just simply not sustainable, and they're not going to be an option. We'll have just exhausted everything.
To Mr. Jefferson's point, I do question what we're saying when we say that it's going up the same amount each year. Last year, the projection that Dr. Cummings gave to the school district and to the select board was that his budget would be 49.7 million. But it's actually, at this point, he's stating 50.5 million, so that's about $50,000 more than he had projected last year. So if anything, actually, to reinforce your point, it goes up higher than you expect. But that being said, why, and I saw your two cost drivers, if you could pull those back up, Dr. Cummings. Why is your budget up so much more than you initially projected? Why is it about $50,000 more than what you had projected last year? Because at some point, there were budgets for those last year. It's not as though this is coming out of nowhere. So, why?
When did I project?
Last year, when you present,
Like
every time you present a budget, you present your 5-year forecast, correct? Like right now, I can see your
Yeah,
forecast for 2028. So then, right?
I so wish, I can't tell you how much I wish we had a set it and forget it budget. That would be fantastic. As the HR director this year, and a really crappy one at that, just in the first 70 days, to give you a sense of the movement, we've hired 30 full-time positions, 10 resignations, 3 terminations, 19 long-term leaves, 5 of which we knew we were going to have. 14 are medically based. We, on a daily basis, manage and do the best we can with the 37 subs we have and their availability. There are just so many variables. We've got HVAC at the high school that conveniently stopped working like the day before ESY started this year. It's not a guess, and it's an experienced guess every year that this is what we think we're going to need. I had no idea that in July and August we'd have 3 students move into the district. They'll never be in our schools, and this isn't a knock on them or their families. That's great, but they all go to out-of-district placements, and they're collaborative placements. So we immediately, the next day, own that tuition cost, and we own the tuitions. There was no way, whenever this was, that I made a projection that I would know that.
Yeah, I'm very interested when the scrubbed budget comes out, because when I look at this budget, for instance, you're saying all paras and media specialists would get a 9.5, like that's your number down the line. And if
Right.
you sit here and tell me that's the average, are you going to say that?
I will.
Okay, that's not.
Just
Just
Okay.
don't, please don't, because
Can
the
I
contract
provide some
increase.
context?
The contract would only, the highest increase that we would give is 7.91%. So,
Right, and you're looking at the contract, right?
and I'm looking at the contract.
But the reality is, like, that contract in the numbers you're looking at wouldn't take in monitors on buses. And we have more monitors on buses tied to IEPs than we've ever had
Okay, so-
before. That also wouldn't take into account, say, after school. And we want students with special needs to participate after school. If they have a para during the day, we're obliged to fund that afterwards. Any claim of us overspending on at least as a school district, and you've probably people here have heard me say it 8 million times. Can you go to that one? I think what Matt talked about with that secret sauce or special sauce is accurate. So that graphic, every single line is one of the 318 districts in the state of Massachusetts. None are left out. And this is total expenditures or per pupil spending, where you add up, the state adds up everything spent on education, including no matter if the town owns it or the school department owns health insurance. It's in there. Everything's in there and divided by the number of students. We are 96% of the districts in the state of Massachusetts spend considerably more than us, like ridiculously more. We should be a complete disaster. We're the red. The state average is a little over 22,000. We're at like 16. If we receive just the state average, that's an additional 15 million a year. Like, it's wild to think that if what I'm hearing is correct and we should spend less, you could argue, or anybody could argue about what I spend on, but the Grafton Public Schools 1,000% do not spend more. If we were like an island state in the middle of the Pacific, that argument might work, but we're not. And then if we jump ahead, can you jump to this? Let's just talk
Can I just
about
interrupt for a
Paris.
second? I never said that you were overspending, and I never
Okay.
said that you were
Well,
over
that's
budgeting.
the
That's not
sense.
exactly what I said at all. So
I just wanna touch on
I know
para.
that you want to keep going on this.
I just want to touch
So,
on
okay, keep going.
paraprofessional pay, which is an increase, a significant increase, and I wish it was more. It's incredibly hard for us to compete for any level of pay with our staff. We are fighting an uphill battle, to say the least. Paraprofessionals were making between $17.49 and $23 and change an hour. These are the comparisons in blue are all the districts that border us. We have a total from lowest step to highest step, a difference of $3.75. Like, that's what we have.
Right.
So not competitive. With the last contract, can you just go forward one? We did increase so we could have a fighting chance at getting people. We increased that bottom. Still have the difference of they can work their way up to $3.75 more after 5 years. They can go, in comparison, Westboro and Shrewsbury, that are always looking, are between $20 and $35 an hour.
Right.
Like,
I'm not.
and without those, we're out of compliance. Well,
Okay, that's not what I was saying. And
that's what I heard.
okay. No, what I was saying was that with this 9.5%, I'd like to know in like some sort of comment or something as to state why that is. If it is in fact that you're having more people over what you had the previous year, for instance, bus monitors and so forth, then it should be denoted.
Well, and it's an increase, eh? So we went from whatever you said, 17.45 to 23 and
We
change.
go to 22, 25 to 26.
Right.
Right, but you went
An
from
hour.
17 and change to
Correct,
23.32 to.
Yeah, well, it was
That,
definitely
but that was the
significant.
previous year. But this year, from FY 26 to FY 27, I mean, the most increase is the 7.9%.
If I may translate, I think what Christy is saying is that she doesn't think the 9.5 is real. She thinks it's less. She thinks it's 7 point whatever.
No, if it is 9, no, I guess I just am more anxious in getting the scrubbed version of this before we start talking about who we're cutting or what we're cutting. Once the budget itself is in an actual, is more,
But it's never going to be.
it will be closer at some point than what it is now. And again, and I had said this in the school committee meeting, when we start talking about cuts, the administrators that just got raises, that 3% raise is not a guaranteed increase in their contract. And that, before we start cutting people, you need to look at what else can be cut within the budget itself.
I would shockingly somewhat disagree. Like,
It is
if
a
we're going to
shock.
go down,
When you disagree with it.
if we're going to, as a community, make the decision to go down this road in red, we are not going to forever going forward not give a certain group administrators, for some unknown reason, no increase. Like, long term, we do need administrators. We've got great teachers. We've got to pay people. Might be fewer of them, but we still are going to have to pay people to try to be competitive.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you don't pay
Wow.
people, but at the end of last year, when you took those cuts, you then went and gave raises that were not budgeted for. So
They
it,
got COLA, no steps,
no, it was
no
not.
lanes.
It was not a COLA increase, Dr. Cummings,
Um,
for the principals.
Mr. Chairman, what do they call you?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
Or a little bit of a tangent. So indulge me. My first job out of college was actually a math job. I did payroll for a staffing company. I know. I know. The staffing company was very interesting, and I'm telling the story for a reason, because the salesmen that worked at my company, their salary was tied to how many people would go to work and how much they would work. So if they worked 40 hours a week at their rates, they would make X amount of money, right? And I remember my good friend, Evan Kaplan, he said to me, you know, my job is really hard, Laura, because it's people. And people, they aren't, I don't want to say reliable, but you can't always bank that one of my guys could be sick a week and not come to work. And I lose X amount of money. I'm telling the story because when you were talking, Jay, I was thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, one of our biggest cost drivers, which I think maybe that's what Mr. Dauphiné was referring to, is salary, right? Because we are 80% people. Matt, when he said, I thought it'd be weird to call him Mr. Often, when Matt was talking about what we deliver is because of our people. We are not, and I know I say this a lot, and I appreciate, I think, you know, I appreciate Anne-Marie was just trying to lower the overall override number, which is something to think about, so it's not quite as high. Because I'll go on the tangent. You know, we're not a store. We are not bringing in revenue. We look at ways to spend our budget responsibly, but we're not looking at ways to earn money. Or I am not, as a public school. I believe full-heartedly that public schools are for the public, and I like to offer an equal opportunity to every student that comes through our doors. So I think it is important to think about that cost driver as people, but also realizing that sometimes people get pregnant and they leave, and then we have to pay their maternity leave, as we should, or the paternity leave, and bring in money, somebody else to cover those, because we rely on people. And again, I think right now we're still thinking so short term. We're talking, and yeah, we can talk, and I think that's our job. We can go back and we're gonna argue about what our priorities are as a board. All 5 of us have different things that we think are super important. We're gonna talk about things like that. But exactly what Jay just said, yep, we could certainly say, hey, Principal Sue, you're not gonna get a 3% next year, and then we're still gonna be $1 million plus in the hole with an angry principal who now has to work with less teachers and expectations that have been high. So that's my summary. I think the takeaway is, you know, it's really hard to earn your living when you have to depend on people, and wouldn't it be nice if we just made, what was your thing? Widgets.
It ain't widgets.
It's not widgets. Thank you. Thanks for indulging me. Appreciate it.
I have, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so I also appreciate what you're saying, Emery. But I think we need to look short term, long term as well. And rather than select board and school committee scrutinizing each line, based on what we've talked about already tonight, you know, I think it might be reasonable for the select board to provide some direction to say, you guys need to find some money, and let them do it rather than all of these suggestions, because I don't know what impact that's going to have to not pay administrators their COLA for a year or whatever. I don't know what the impacts are going to be. Jay's got to manage these staff. Evan's got to manage his services. So I think if we're interested in doing that, we should challenge them with a number to find.
Yep, that's where I was going.
So,
Yep.
that's something that I'm interested in talking about. And then I think, you know, we need to talk about longer term too. Other things, like how long would we want an override? What's a reasonable amount? All that kind of stuff. But I think our most productive thing would be to give some direction to Jay and Evan, because that's what they're asking us to do, so that they can plan and they can come back with some options. So that's my thinking.
So, just a couple points. So as far as priorities, for me, it's public safety's number one. So that's fire, police, DPW. We need those, right? They're, I think, very lean, and we need to keep the staff that we have, so I would not touch those three departments. I think having, Jay and his staff go through the budget line item by line item and getting detailed, I think that's a really important exercise that they go through, so that and after that, I think we can figure out what we need moving forward, what we need to do moving forward. But I think that's an important number, both for these boards and for the finance committee. The finance committee hasn't even looked at this, and I'm hoping they're gonna do their due diligence and go line item by line item, because that's what they should be doing. Okay, after the school committee, there should be the objective committee that goes through and asks questions of both Evan and Jay about the budget. So I'm hoping that they're gonna take some time to do that, because we're gonna need all of that in order to defend an override, if that's what we end up doing. So in order to have credibility with the residents, we need to have really solid, clear, accurate numbers. So that's my 2 cents.
If I may. To piggyback off of that, I think our numbers are pretty solid, but fair point, and we are looking at the budget all the time. But I want to remind everybody, we cut a bunch of people last year. We cut a bunch of material. Like, happy to think about ways to maybe generate something like increasing school choice or whatever, which I frankly hadn't thought about. But we're extremely lean, so I don't think we're going to see big cuts that aren't catastrophic. So happy to consider ways to generate something, but we aren't a store, as my colleague said. But we're also extremely lean, whether we go line item by line item or not. So I just want to remind folks about the cuts we made last year to people and things.
Yeah, I'm jumping quick there, because I echo that. You know, we can definitely discuss this in broad strokes, and there will be numbers that need to be refined, but I don't see a scenario where we get anywhere close to covering us for the gap for this year. And if we do, it's the same scenario that we put ourselves in last year, where next year we're going to be right in the same place discussing all the same things all over again. We cut the schools, I should say, cut 6.5 positions last year. In one of your meetings, in one of your earlier, budget meetings, Dr. Cummings talked about staff requested positions that are unfunded for this year. And even if they're unfunded for this year, to me, that's a projection of at least something we need to consider over the next 5 years. And it was basically replacing those 6.5 personnel, but none of them were in the positions that were removed. They were heavily on special ed. We have a specialized reading teacher, 2 special ed teachers, and 3 paraprofessionals. So, I mean, to me, that really speaks to when you're asking the people doing the work, that's where additional funding is going to be needed, as opposed to the discussion we're having right now about reductions. And again, if we're talking reductions and it's a 1-to-1 and you want to add those type of staff, that means that it has to come from somewhere else. And I'm going to continue to parrot that I don't think we're in a position to do that. Whether we have the final numbers right now or not, how tightly we scrutinize them right now or not, we're up against it at this point. We're just getting through and surviving this year does nothing to, you know, that's not a long-term plan. It's not sustainable. It's the same position we found ourselves in last year, and we made it through, but, you know, how many more years are we going to continue to just eke through while we're identifying needs where we need to grow and also making a concerted effort to reduce? Ms. Foley.
Yeah, I'll just kind of finish up what I have, and I've worked on a lot of budgets in my career, so the word is revenue, whatever it is. If I'm asking Jay to bring in a student, or to look at bringing in a student for school choice, the goal is to bring in $150,000 or whatever it is, and I would call that revenue. But so that's what I'm looking at. Is I have combed over the budget, given that we have determined that we're going to meet, you know, as long as we need to. So I figured I will certainly know it inside and out. So I have gone through every line item already. So in terms of one other question for Jay, is the HR position, that 120-ish, already in what you have given us?
Correct.
Like, is that 123?
Correct.
Yep,
That's
okay.
it.
All right. And then the rest of the staffing needs that Andy was just alluding to, the other 3, 4, 5, 6.5, that's not here?
Correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that. And then, so on the town side, you indicated the $1 million from UPS. Like, what does that look like, or what have we, looking at Mary, but like, what are we projecting going forward? Do we have an idea?
For like one-time revenues.
Sure.
So
One time, and then even just, ongoing.
yeah, so I mean, it's already baked into our revenue is what we think our baseline is, right? So that's all the normal stuff that we're going to see throughout the year. That's our
Yep.
average driven. We generally don't budget or forecast those large one-time fees because of things that are beyond our control.
So
Right.
beyond, let's say
And
beyond that
that-
even.
So, and then that closes to free cash, which is what drives our capital.
Yep. So even just ongoing revenues, so taxes, excise, et cetera?
Yes.
Any idea on what that might look like?
Yes, so
Few years
that's
out?
yes, that's in this forecast that we put together. So
Okay,
when you look at general fund revenues, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all nested, and we can certainly provide the broken apart
okay, so it's
budget.
there.
But it is all here. That's what we think we're going to see for growth.
Okay, great.
One caveat to that is you'll see that we carry 3.5, 3.4, 3.4, and then we see a drop. We don't really think that drop is what happens, but it's so far out
Sure,
that it's just never gonna. We don't want that number to be a 4.3 and then it comes in at 2. So
yep.
it
got
gets
it.
more conservative the farther to the right you go.
And then things like LIP money, Eastland, that's like a one-time, that's kind of in there somewhere.
That's no. So
Yeah.
this is what we can expect if none of that comes to fruition, and we deliberately do not bake any of that in,
Okay,
because if it doesn't come through, then you're in
Sure.
real bad shape.
okay.
Yeah.
And
See
when
also
will that
UPS.
come in?
What's that?
When will that come in, the Eastland LIP money? 'Cause they're already digging.
Yeah, I have to look at. I honestly wasn't prepared for that.
Okay.
I can look at what that agreement says,
Okay,
and that's a good question though.
and
Follow up on that.
relative to the fire positions that the chief asked about last time, which, wasn't a surprise for sure.
Right.
We know that, again, given the construction that's going on, the construction that's been approved and proposed, we're gonna have some problems. Are the 2 positions that he initially thought about in this, or is that the one?
That's the one
Okay.
based on the conversation, and so
So that's
Thought
already
it-
been pulled out.
one has been pulled out.
Okay.
One exists in here.
Okay,
And so I did that because we hadn't had that conversation yet. So just
Sure.
leave it where
Has
the
one
request
been
was.
pulled or moved to next year?
So one has been moved to next year.
Yeah.
One still lives in the budget.
Okay.
Again, that's his request, and
Yep.
I didn't feel that it was my role to pull it out of there. So whatever the board decides, that's how we'll move from there. But that already exists in that 484. So
The
or
one position.
1.484. Yeah. So
Yep.
he projected about an $80,000 salary on that particular position. So if if you wanna think about it as not existing, it's 1.4 flat.
Got it. And then similarly to, you know, talking to Jay, and as I said before, trying to think about, you know, revenue, what can we do? I just want to confirm that, like, say on the building side, the permit fees have been looked at relative to other towns and we are way competitive.
We're
that respect?
competitive. Tracy and I have talked about coming for the board to go up.
Okay, great.
It's again, small revenue,
Sure.
but it is already in the queue for conversation.
Yep.
Um,
And just so everyone knows, this is how I work. Small, every dollar counts for me
yeah.
in
Yep.
all which ways.
We-
Okay,
We've talked about, we have been having a kind of more holistic conversation about fees in general.
right. Because that's what I was gonna say, like all
Yeah,
fees, forget about
there's,
the fire, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and there's a kind of esoteric conversation about fees and taxes and all the rest of it. So we're trying to be mindful of, not driving up fees on everything at the same time. But we are looking at it, and we'll, bring that forward.
And I'll just, yeah, I can finish up. I just guess globally, I just want to say, kind of echoing Craig a little bit, that, you know, I feel it's my job. I was elected by people to look at this and look at it closely and spend their money wisely, or vote to spend their money wisely. And so that's what I'm doing, trying to figure out ways that we can, I understand that we obviously have an issue. I've been watching every single meeting. I've watched all of the school committee meetings, the finance committee meetings. I've heard all the same stuff. I get it. But, you know, what can we do? Even if it's incremental, even if it's just 50,000 here, 30,000 there.
Yep.
Those potentially could be, especially given Jay's numbers relative to paras, our positions, right? So I would challenge both of you to really look at, you know, what have we done since our last go around, to really look at increasing all the revenue sides. The other thing that I didn't mention, but I know I've mentioned to Jay separately, is just the notion of the Educational Endowment Fund, which I know is kind of a separate thing altogether, but it was brought up last time around. I don't think that the school committee or anyone in the school end did anything, you know, in terms of looking into that, but I would encourage that to be something that you might want to put on your plate. I've seen other communities where, again, if it's $50,000-$60,000 that's sitting there, it's something, right, that can be used for various things. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Just one question. State aid, two questions. Looks like they're averaging like 200 grand a year as far as for the schools, right? We expect that to continue. And when do we get that number?
So we'll get the cherry sheet next week. What's that?
Third week in January.
Right. Is that next week?
week.
Okay.
Okay.
So next week we should have an idea of where their preliminary numbers gonna.
All right. We have no indication to date, like what?
Not from what I've been reading. I mean, they kind of do the same dance every year.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think if you look at the state's budget numbers as a whole that it looks real rosy.
Yeah.
But that's just speculation on my part.
And
Unless you're hearing something different. Yeah.
two quick questions for Jay. So, when do you think you'll have kind of a go through with the budget and some adjusted, numbers from what we were talking about earlier, like any ballpark?
I'd say over the next 2 school committee meetings, so
So a
by
month?
early February, yeah,
Okay. All right. Great.
yeah.
And it looks like, for the long-term vision, which we were talking about, it looks like you're budgeting for like $3 million increases every year.
Correct.
All right. And is that based on the same cost drivers as that what we saw tonight?
Yeah, the additional out of district, we just don't know how that's gonna play out, but yes, those are the 3 big things for us. For everybody's obviously got salaries and kind of our insurance, if you will, issue with that cost increase has been out of district tuition and transportation.
Yeah. Well, that salary number is going to be, interesting to look at because it's such a big part of your budget.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's 30% of the town budget. So that's a big number, and it's 2 million of the 3 that you're requesting. So it's a big part of what we're talking about tonight. So
Right.
be nice to have that.
Yep. But we will definitely have that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a challenge for the town as a whole to try to become even more competitive in terms of salaries. It just is.
Yeah.
It's a question, Dr. Cummings, not a statement.
Okay.
This actually more towards Evan. So years ago, there was a special ed stabilization account type thing that the town had voted on that we would put money in, and I think there was a cap of about 250,000, if I'm not mistaken. What is being done to help build that up where we have the free cash? Are we putting anything into that stabilization account? Nothing?
When we voted on it, sorry to jump in.
That'd be
actually,
great.
It was the schools were supposed to add to it if we had any money left over. That was the
So-
long-term plan. So we haven't, I don't think it's been in an investment fund. Maybe somebody invested it. I think it's just sitting there, right? So we have some money we could take out, but it was on our side. And we don't ever have money to put back.
Well, but like we were talking today, right?
Sorry.
Like we had like 12 grand last year, or 25 grand the year before that's been used at the end of the budget for the debt reimbursement. Remember we were talking about that today? So should that have been going into this
Different monies.
different money?
Yep.
So how is it different money? I'm just not understanding, because if it's leftover money from what we had as the school, and Mrs. Austin just said if we had leftover money, it goes into that.
I thought that. I mean,
I don't understand.
I'm
I'm just
going
having
on
difficulty.
Okay.
Could you please
time.
understand?
We'll get back to you. Give us a couple of days and we'll send that out to.
Okay.
And what was that, like
Trying-
the
I'm just trying to understand, like, if we could help
Yeah.
build that, if we have,
When was that?
like,
Before
even if it's like even if it's like 12 grand a year that we end up with extra, if we could help build our own stabilization for special ed, that would,
that might have been on us to bring up. I think that's a good. I didn't realize that. Was your,
I-
yeah,
I-
we voted
I-
on it.
Just to be clear, I believe it predates me and Mary.
Yeah, it does.
The
Yeah.
creation of that and whatever that funding mechanism is supposed to be.
Yeah,
So
it
I'm
was-
happy to look at that, and Mary and I will certainly dig into it, but I don't know that top of mind because that's not.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we could help build our own special ed stabilization with, whether it's 5 grand that we have or 10 grand, like, over the years, that would build up for ourselves, for special ed.
Fair enough.
I want to just back up for the select board briefly, only because the fire position has been touched on a couple times already. Craig has indicated that public safety is an area that he wants to see protected. It felt like Anne Marie was in supportive of that, in support of adding that fire position as well.
Well, I thought that maybe it was in December, at some point you had indicated that there were 2 positions in there, so already. So I was just asking, was one plucked
Right.
out already?
Yes.
So they were already there.
I would like for us to take a position on that at this point, just for the sake of clarity for Evan moving forward. Is that additional single fire position something that we want to see remain intact?
For me,
For
I mean,
this
yes.
Yeah.
But I just
For-
want to
for
still
FY25.
clarify, so if there were 2 positions in there at some point,
At the very beginning of
and
the
now at the
budget
1.484, one has been plucked out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We want to see that protected.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, you guys certainly make my life easy. I appreciate
Well,
that.
that's the thing, right? So we have one
Just at the
position
back,
to
you got 80,
consider. I think
you
it's
got
easy
1.4
for us
to go.
to do that, right? But that's, potentially going to mean another position or 2 somewhere else in town. So just with that in mind, I'm in agreement with you, Craig, that public safety is up there for me, and I think it definitely needs to be protected. For me, as I look at the 2 positions, I see one that's an inspector position, and I think that is something that's very much needed with what's going on. I don't know about the one for next year, the training. That seems to me maybe something that you could delegate out for a period of time, maybe. So maybe that's one that we could wait on a little bit. But I think the inspector is definitely something that we really need today, and should be in this year's budget. Even if that means potentially in a reduction scenario, looking at other departments.
Yeah, and he's not just gonna be an inspector, he's also gonna be an online firefighter as well. He's gonna wear
Yep.
both hats.
Absolutely.
So I think the department, like you said, needs to grow, but it can be, there's no rush to grow it quickly, we
Right.
can do it at a slow pace.
So knowing that, what I would propose to the board is that I will refine the reduction budget, ish with, further conversation with Jay about what the balance of numbers needs to be, and then I can bring back a more, or less generic version of that, knowing that we're gonna target public safety as retention, protect that additional fire position, and then, find the money elsewhere.
I have one idea. I'm going to throw out there, I guess, for general discussion, in terms of things that we could potentially reduce. We could consider withdrawing from the Community Preservation Act. That saves us 1.5. I say saves us. That is 1.5% tax that the residents are currently used to paying. That if we withdrew, could go towards additional funding, whether that's in the form of the reduction budget or an override, to help offset some of that cost. It is not without its cons. That is in particular a funding driver for the Affordable Housing Trust. That is where they get their primary budget. And in the years, in recent years, I should say, it has been a great aid to the rec department as they try to improve some of our recreational facilities around town. But beyond that, if we're talking about creative solutions, I'm going to put that one on the table. We could consider rejoining in the future. I don't believe there's a real penalty with that either way. But, state reimbursement when we first joined was 100%. Now it's down to, I believe, about 17%. That 1.5% that we put in looks like about $750,000 annually. So.
It's funny, I just looked at my tax bill today to see what that number was, thinking that, okay, override is gonna be X, there's most of it.
Yep.
It would be a
Potentially.
shame, but understood. Not my place.
I don't think we're going to do public comment quite yet.
I have a clarification.
Okay.
Greg Marr, 36 Ferry Street. I am a member of a finance committee, but I am not speaking on their behalf. The CPA 1.5% is added on top, so that would not affect the overall budget. It would affect how much money people pay in taxes, but it would not have any effect on the budget before we get to that point.
Thank you.
I think what you're saying, Andy, is people are used to paying that 1.5%, that's $750,000 in revenue. So if you withdrew from CPA, people's tax bill goes down by that requisite, or the subsequent 1.5%. And then if you're asking for an override, it's the delta.
Correct.
Is a wash there.
Correct. Yep. Exactly that.
I agree with that. I think we need to look at that. We all hate to lose it, but it's real money, and if we can find that money somewhere else and take less burden off the taxpayer, I think there's value to it.
That's such a tough one. I hate to even think about that, but in the same spirit as an override, that might be something that we just offer a choice to residents as to whether they want to continue, and that's a pretty direct way of helping clarify what the priorities are. And if people want to continue with that, because we have seen a lot of value from CPA over the years, especially recently with land purchases and other things, that they would have that option to potentially offset an override decision. None of these options are great, but that's a reasonable thing to do. Is that something where, if we were to opt out, when would that take effect, I guess?
I think we could do it for
Spring.
July 1, right?
Yeah.
We would do it in the spring, and
Agree.
we would just not collect that revenue, right? We will dig into that just to make sure that we're correct on that. I've never withdrawn from CPA as a town
Just don't tell
administrator.
the state so they keep sending.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we will verify that that's how that would look, but yes, we can put that together for you.
And just an aside, again, you know, I really like having that. I like what it's done for our town. But I did look at my tax bill today for exactly this reason. And to Evan's point, it's not about taking money off of, you know, the operational budget. It's just, if I'm not paying 166 and this override cost me 166, then here I am. Just as an aside, for some people who maybe weren't here when this came before us, it was a tough battle to get it through on the town side for sure. So, you know, it'd be a shame in that respect as well, but, you know, it is what it is. Again, tough decisions.
I agree, and I think we've done a lot of good with that funding. You know, we are at the tough decisions place. You know, it's
Just lastly, this is just a small thing, and I know some people will say, oh, she's looking at dollars, but, you know, we get a stipend. I don't know who else, maybe the moderator might get a stipend. It's not much, but I'd be happy to withdraw, you know, take that away.
We'll also give up our stipend.
Yeah, well, 100%.
It'll be a huge difference.
I would love to get rid of that stipend so that it's really crystal clear that this is a volunteer position.
I would do a few less hours if I didn't get the $1,000, but
So yeah, let's do
Well,
that.
consider it gone.
Great.
Easiest cut I made all day, Jay. No, just kidding.
okay.
So, Evan,
Yes.
you were the sort of asking for some direction.
Yep.
Where are you right now in terms of
Perfect.
the discussion?
I think I have the direction that I need to be able to work with the school department and Mary and Kathleen and put together, you know, a more finite reduction budget and show you what the impact would be on the municipal side, and be prepared. I think February 11th is the date by charter that I have to present the budget to the finance committee. If I'm doing my math
What's the
right.
date?
February 11th, I believe, is when I have to have a presented budget. So we're on track for that.
And Jay, you're going in on March 24th or something, at least from your timeline. That was in your budget. Looks like you're presenting in front of Finance Committee on March 24th.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
That's what it says here.
Yeah. Yes. Yes,
All right,
I am.
well, that's
Don't be
probably when they
late.
get into their whole March thing when everyone goes before finance, right?
Yeah, March Madness.
Yeah.
Before, I don't know, it sounds like we're kind of moving off of us, I guess, or I'm getting that feeling, and I just wanted to, first of all, I appreciate all the work. I know firsthand how much work all you do, and giving up that stipend it's something, so thank you. Like, I do want to acknowledge that. I don't think it's little things, but it does, you know, you really can pull that I'm just a volunteer thing, which is, you know, has never helped me defending myself.
That's not why I presented it.
I know that was my Matt. That was a Matt thing. I'm going to say it because I'm on the school side. I appreciate that you're asking them to come back and reduce more. I am here to ask for you to consider an override, and I know we are trying to figure out how much that is. And to Amory's point again, perhaps we can reduce the override ask. I don't know. That's up to all of us to decide. But for me, there's a few things this town has to deliver. You are right. We can't go off without public safety. We cannot have without our DPW. That's a non-functioning town. We also have to provide public schools. That's what we need. Everything else makes this town an amazing place. I'd like to keep everything that makes this town so wonderful. But if we're forced to choose, and I think we need to give the town the right. So I think it sounds like you guys just aren't there yet, but I'm concerned for people who are watching at home or are here that they're thinking like, oh, they're just continuing to talk about reductions, which is important, and we're getting there. I'm just saying, I'm going to say the word from my point of view that for me, that is what I would like. I'd like to keep our schools as whole as they've been. And I've been on the board a very long time, and we've had, unless the world changes, unless we get rid of Prop 2.5, unless the state aid changes, we are going to we are override dependent as Grafton. I've watched you guys try to bring in the revenue. I've had these conversations, and I appreciate it. I totally get why we have to keep having the same conversation year after year and go line by line. I also know what the end game is, and I understand that we need to be fiscally responsible. All of that, I believe we are, and I'm bringing it up so it is said by someone, and it might as well be me.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's great to be clear and transparent about that. And I think we can do a little bit of planning here. Again, my thought process with setting up some of these joint meetings was we need to do both, right? We need to present a budget that is balanced, or the override option. We've all been kind of focused on the reductions at this point, so it felt like that was something we could come to a reasonable consensus tonight. It sounds like I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but there might be some additional material. There are additional materials that will be coming back, but other things for us to each react to in our individual meetings next week. And I hoped that when we came back on the 27th, that would be our primary focus, would be, this meeting again, but heavily focused on what an override looks like and what those reasonable numbers are. And I think it is incredibly valuable to get that information out to the public so that they are aware this is the direction we intend to move. Again, Leora and I talked about this a few times, tried to figure out what we felt was attainable goals for each of the meetings and what we could, wrap up. And, I think that hour and a half, 2 hours is a good meeting sweet spot. They tend to be less productive after, after that amount of time. Yeah. So,
especially now that we're not getting paid.
I know, seriously. But thank you. I think, those goals weren't made clear on the agenda, which is fine, and that's not absolutely, I appreciate it. I know how hard this is, so not even that. I just know the feedback I heard from my last meeting where people were really frustrated with us, and it takes time, and we have to do a lot of the things, but I wanted to make sure, we're still moving forward. It's not nothing is done. We don't know what's, we're still doing all our work. So thanks for clarification. So. Yep. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I think sometimes even tonight's agenda, for example, there are times we wish we could be more specific, but again, you never really know how the conversation's going to go and what we're going to, get to. So, I know you understand, and I guess it's more, general public and the people watching at home, but, anyways, that was a thought process, and I guess would echo that I appreciate everybody coming together tonight for the conversation and the, the info that was shared.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just quickly, to that point, I would like to, focus on what an override framework, I guess, sooner than later. Understanding, and this is something that I felt like I struggled with a little bit last year. We're going to continue to get numbers coming in over the next couple of months. I really don't want that to hold us up from having discussions about the override framework. We can decide rough numbers and get pretty close, and we can discuss length, and we can discuss service priorities. There's a lot of things that we can discuss in terms of what it would comprise of without having every single number in its finalized form, I guess. So I just want to caution the select board I don't want to fall into that, well, we need this, so let's wait. We need that, so let's wait, because I just don't think that's going to be productive to say it, very directly. We're headed for an override, so it's just a matter of we've got to position the override in the right way, and that does mean going through line by line and all of the various questions that everybody has. But on the other side of it, overrides are an inexact science. So beyond a year or two, what we're going to be faced with in 2029, I have no idea. It's kind of guesswork at this point. So to get hung up on, you know, a couple $100,000 in a given year, I just don't think is wise for the select board. We need to be providing that high level strategy and vision for an override. So I just don't want us to get stuck on those smaller numbers, I guess, before we start having those override framework discussions and sketching it out. Yeah, so that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
I mean, if I might, I disagree, but again, it's all in everyone's different approach, right, to all of this. If I'm out there talking to people, which I am every single day, I've got people reaching out to me every single day. The more information that I have, the more that I can say that, yeah, those numbers are pretty darn close. They're within 0.25 or whatever it is. The better off I am. And at the end of the day, we're bringing this override to the public. And if I'll speak for myself. If I can't say that, yes, in fact, I tried to make sure that every stone was unturned, or was turned to whatever the saying is. Is it at the 2-hour mark yet? But, you know, point is that for me, $100,000 here, $100,000 there, that makes a difference in terms of me going out and talking to the public and them coming to vote for this. And ultimately, that's what's got to happen, right? And again, I'm happy with the fact that we were able to get through last year and have the taxpayers have some relief for a year. But again, it doesn't change the fact that this year, my narrative is the same. I've still got to go out there, right, and get people to come to town meeting to vote for this. And I need to be able to tell them that, yep, here's where we are. And so again, for me, because I am maybe just super detail oriented with numbers, if I can say that, hey, Jay looked and he snagged 150, Evan got 50, that actually is something that's beneficial for me in terms of, you know, going out there and talking to folks.
Start at the top and work our way down.
I guess I hear what you're saying, and of course, we're accountable to taxpayers and we have to tell the story. But I don't think anybody's surprised that we're here wanting an override. I mean, last year was a stopgap, right? So we should be doing the work while we're, you know, fixing the bicycle while we're riding it, right? We have to do both. Because as Laura said, we are override dependent. That's just a fact of municipal finance in Massachusetts under Proposition 2.5. And we made it work last year. So I'm concerned about being too coy about the override conversation because we all knew it was coming. So doing both things, I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying I think there's a danger in waiting too long to talk about it.
I think maybe everyone's missing my point. So we're at 1484, right? Is what the number that we're at right now. If somehow, I shouldn't say if Jay and Evan can bring that to 1.1 or 1.2 or whatever it is,
Sure.
that is acting in good faith. And then we say to folks like, yes, here was your budget, just like we all, you know, I own a business. Here's what I want it to be, and here's where I have to end up.
Yeah.
And maybe P.S. in 2 weeks or whenever we get those numbers and you guys massage your numbers more, maybe it still is 1484. But I'm not talking about no override. I'm just simply asking for as much as we can get, and as low as we can get that number.
Everybody agrees
Can I
with
just
that.
reply to that? I totally appreciate what you're saying, Emery. And I don't want it to come off as if I don't want anybody who has suggestions or questions or whatever to go through that process. But I also feel like another way to think about it is if these guys are projecting out a certain number and we're looking at a 5-year override and they're saying 9 point whatever, we can just say you're only going to get 8 and you've got to figure it out and give them that, and
Right.
and to put pressure on that way.
And that's what I'm trying not to do, I guess, is I could say like, yeah, just let's cut find 10% or find X percent.
I think
But
that would
maybe
be
then
I
sure,
think
come
that
up
would
with
be a
something.
better approach,
Okay.
actually,
Yeah.
for us to come up with a number and challenge those guys with what is that going to look like, as opposed to, because we really can only focus on this year. And when we contemplate an override, it's, maybe it's a 1-year override, but probably not.
Right.
So, you know, there is a level of confidence that we have to give people, but, you know, on the other side of those things, every single line gets scrutinized every single year at Finance Committee and has already been done over the past 2 years. So like this process is pretty functional in Grafton, I feel like. So yeah, let's get through that process. But I also feel like because it's a little bit inexact as we go out more years, we as a board can provide direction to say, yeah, we get it, that looks good, but you're gonna have to figure out a way to do this a little bit less expensive.
Yep, certainly a different way to look at it. Like,
You know?
try to come up with a number. We could, yep.
And that's a way for us to get to a number, to get to a time frame for it. Again, that sort of framework approach to it. And then if something, you know, and then we continue our process of going through, looking at each of the things that we have tonight. I'm not saying we don't do that. We absolutely have to do that. But I think in parallel, we have to be able to start those override. We have to start sketching it out so that when we feel like we're ready, we just pull the trigger on it and we start. Because my concern is about actually the messaging to the public. That once we've come out with it, you know, there's 200 people watching this meeting. We need to get to the other 12,000 voters or whatever.
I
And
doubt
we-
there's 200. Too.
And we need,
That's the sad part.
probably not. I know, that's really optimistic.
What, 80 at town meeting?
80, I think.
Really optimistic. But we have to get to the other 12,000, so we need time to do that. And I think even 2 or 3 extra weeks will actually make a pretty big difference for the folks that may want to go out and knock door to door to tell people what this is about and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very time sensitive if it's not obvious. So I'll shut up.
So, just to bounce off of Matt, you know, I haven't been to a finance committee meeting in a long time, so I'll just ask somebody that's here from finance, to Matt's point, do you guys go with every department, do you go line item by line item and you go through that budget and ask questions when there's red flags that, you know, if you see something that doesn't look right, is that part of the discussion that you're gonna have with Evan's budget and with, Jay's budget? It is, okay.
Thing is, it doesn't happen till March. It's always been March for as long as I've lived here, right? So this is the thing. There's the
Yeah.
pressure from the finance committee for us to, you know, get this all wrapped up, but it's somewhat negating the process that we have for them to go line item by line.
That's my point. I mean, listen, you know, I understand if we're gonna go for an override, we need to get the word out, but we have a budget process and we can't let the override drive that process. You know what I mean? That's not how this works. You know, we can talk about an override and we can come up with a number once it's been vetted and we feel good about it. And we should wait until we can do that because we want to put forth good numbers. But we have a budget process that's spelled out in our town charter and we should follow that process. We can't all of a sudden say, oh, we're not going to go through that because we're just going to go for an override. I'm not comfortable with that, but I'm one vote on the board and
I
we'll
think
see how it goes.
that's the issue, though. I'm not suggesting we don't use the budget process, but that's the budget. The override is a different, more strategic decision that we're talking about. It's not the budget. So the budget will be 1 year of a multi-year override, and I think that budget discussion is really super important. I'm not suggesting that we don't go through that process. We absolutely should. But
You want to see them run concurrently?
I want to see them run concurrently because we're talking about 3 to 5 years, I would imagine, of budgets. And we can only talk about one in the budget process, but we've got to consider all of those other years. And I just don't want to wait until mid-March to do that. I don't think that's wise.
To that point, we know what we allocated for the budget this year. FinCom went through the budget line by line last year, and we you know, we didn't add. we grew by whatever the minimum amount was. So it's not like you know, we've gone 5 years with the budget unchecked departmentally. They go through this exercise every year. There just isn't the opportunity year over year for a large sum of money to suddenly appear somewhere or have been squirreled away. If there were, we would have found it in the past fiscal years. It's not like this is the first time we're going through this exercise.
I actually think, as far as the override goes, the scrutiny that the select board should have is in future years, not this year. Let's look at the assumptions, like we talked about the revenue projections, get a little more conservative. We need to potentially factor that in.
So I think these are good things for us to talk about next week, and a little bit more in one of our meetings. If you want to give the rest of the school committee their opportunity to speak.
I just wanted to say, actually, and Mr. Upton, you're gonna not like me in a minute. I was going to say that, given that Dr. Cummings is stating that it's gonna take 2 more school committee meetings to get the budget in a more presentable state where we're scrubbing the salaries and kind of starting it back, I would almost say that the January 27th meeting is kind of fruitless in that what are we going to present that's different than we are saying right now?
To wait. I agree.
If we're not bringing anything back that's different, like if we're not going to bring back half of a different budget, that's not. And to your point of what you made to me back in December, let the school committee do its work. We've got to get to work. We need to do our work and go through this budget. That's a process that needs to happen. And if Dr. Cummings is saying for next two school committees, this is what we're doing, then this is what we're doing.
Well, we can leave that, whatever that date is on, and we can always pass over it if we decide. You said you're presenting 212 to finance?
That's when the date is. I have to look at what,
Yeah.
I don't remember what day of the week that is.
No, but like, in other words, we would have a couple of meetings before then, just the same.
So
In terms of
we're
select
probably
board
gonna
stuff.
have the cherry sheet numbers by that point.
Yeah, we
And
will.
there was a number of questions asked tonight that I
Yep.
think could be addressed potentially. So I do think there's gonna be some information. So I think we should keep it.
I disagree. I agree with Christie. I think the 27th, we're not going to have enough. I'm not coming here every week to have the same discussion 5 months before town meeting. So I think we need, to Christie's point, let them do the work and come back, sometime in mid-February or whenever you guys have, something new for us to look at. I don't think we should be here every week in January. It's just, it's a waste of
I think
everybody's
it's super
time.
fun that I've come here every year and had this exact same conversation, but touche. I guess over, and the numbers I know we'll get to, the past year, every person I've spoken to, I've talked about needing an override. Nobody said, how much are my taxes gonna go up? I've been saying, you need to pay attention because our budget is it's not sustainable, as we all know, and you need to understand and start paying attention and learning. And no one's been like, okay, but I have to know how much my tax is. And they haven't said, yes, Laura, I want an override. I'm not very popular. People don't like hearing it. But I've been I can still talk about having an override because that's what we need. And if you guys, I know that's not the case, but then I am going to talk to people and say, hey, you need to, let people know that this is what you want. So I'm a little like, I guess I'm slightly confused, and I'll talk to Jay, but like our budget there shouldn't be a big surprise. The newest thing that was not a surprise was the kids that moved in. Those were something we couldn't predict, but everything else was fairly predictable. We haven't added anything. Our salaries have gone up due to our contract obligations, and transportation has gone up. That's out of our control, but we had an idea what it was going to be. Like, I don't know, like, what's going to drastically change in 2 weeks. Like, this budget, it's not finalized, and we're going to talk about maybe how it's presented differently, but are we suddenly going to get to add great programs and add in 10 extra teachers that you're going to tell me about in 2 weeks, Jay? My guess is no. So I'm just not sure, like, what is going to drastically change in our budget. And I'm still going to leave this meeting and advocate for that I would like an override to the people that like, and it's not just children, parents of children who want good, solid public schools. So.
Kind of going off what Laura said, because we're still getting questions, people are asking us, like, is the override happening? Because they want to see level services. So we need to go back and message them. I sat here last year, same conversation was going on, pretty much the same numbers. I mean, I don't think they they fluctuate all that much. You know, projections year over year, you know, they go up, what, 3, 4, 5%, you know. So we need to just get down to figure out, is it gonna be a 3-year, 5-year, figure out the number pretty quickly, so we can all go out and talk and tell people what's gonna happen. And they're gonna ask, like, how much are my taxes gonna go up? And, you know, we're gonna have that number eventually, but we need to go out now and start telling them, yes, you can expect that you'll see this at town meeting and on the ballot. And I think just kind of going back with the budgets, you know, cutting here and there, like a few dollars and finding 50,000, you know, is great. But, you know, if we say the override to be X amount, we don't have to use all of that money if something comes in. Like, we stretched out the 2021 override for what, like 6 years? So I think getting bogged down on what is that number is just delaying everything. Like last year, we were like April, May, you know, trying to talk about a $800,000 override that we did with cuts. So I think we should just maybe not have the next meeting and just figure out what the override number is gonna be and get out there and talk to our students, not our students, but our parents, our caregivers, and let them know to expect it.
And I think realistically, I don't say this to be critical. That number is probably closer to 4 months at most, because we need to consider that this needs to go on town meeting warrant. It will need to go on the ballot. We have, kind of hard deadlines for those things. So it's, just that time goes quickly. We're halfway through January. We typically only each meet twice a month, so it doesn't leave a lot of runway between now and then. As Finance Committee was referenced, I'm going to let Mr. Marr come up and make a statement.
Yep. Thank you. Again, I am a member of the Finance Committee. I'm not here speaking on behalf of the Finance Committee. 300 days ago, I sat in that chair in the middle of our budget process, and you told me it was too late to put an override. We are 9 weeks from where we met last year, and you said it's too late. You have to have the amount in to the town clerk to put it on the ballot in mid-April. That is when you have to have the number for your override. We had the discussion then. You said, we're going to do it earlier this year. Well, it is now earlier this year. If you wait more than a few weeks, it is no longer earlier. The Finance Committee met the superintendent in December. We met with Evan last week. At that meeting, you probably have seen the email now, we strongly recommended that the select board commit to putting an override on the ballot. 65 days. In 65 days, we will be exactly where we were last year with no movement.
I just have a question for Greg. So you're not meeting with Jay until March 24th.
That is the public hearing for the town meeting warrant.
So is there any way you could move that up so that you guys could hear it sooner? I mean, it's 2 months away.
We have a meeting, I believe, the day after Evan presents the budget to you. The process for Finance Committee is the town administrator, in coordination with the select board, presents a budget or develops a budget, presents it to the Finance Committee. They present it with full details. We meet with each department and go through it line by line at that point. Then we come back another month later and have the public hearings on the budget so that the public can provide that information. By that time, it is well past when the select board needs to have their input on the budget. The select board provides input on the budget to the town administrator before it is presented to Finance Committee in the first week or so of February per charter.
All right, so you can't move it up. And you made a recommendation to us to strongly consider an override when you haven't seen the budget.
We've seen this.
You haven't had budget hearings, I guess.
We haven't had budget hearings
Okay, that's
because
all.
the budget hearings, the charter mandated budget hearings are for the public to review the budget after it has been presented, after the select board has done its review, and pretty much most of the time after the select board has already decided whether it needs to put an override on the budget or not, on the ballot or not, because by that point it is 2 months from town meeting. That gives zero opportunity for outreach, zero opportunity for the public to come to those budget meetings and discuss. And what he said, as people have said here, the override on the ballot is a cap. We don't have to spend to the cap. We don't have to put a number on now. We can say, we know that we want the people of the town of Grafton to decide whether or not they want to make these cuts that are going to be required if there is no override. Either way, you have to put together a budget that has those cuts. That will be presented at town meeting as a balanced budget. You would then have to put together an additional appropriation that is then voted on by the town, and the Proposition 2.5 override that is voted on the next week in election, and also in the mail-in ballots, which have already started going out at that point and have already been being returned for a few weeks. So no, there is not a lot of time. We are within 3 months of when people will start voting on the override.
Thank you.
For anyone else have any other questions? No. Thank you.
To that point, I am gonna, I guess, push back on your comment a little bit there, Craig, because we met not too far after this with the finance committee last year, and this feels like a little bit of mixed messaging. Because last year when they were here and throwing out proposals for either reductions or override, there was a little bit of dismissal that they were advisory, and that this was our problem to solve. So I don't think we can then come back to them this year and ask why they haven't reviewed the budget at this point and insist that they be more involved when last year we pushed them aside.
I'm just not asking them to be more involved. I'm just asking them if they can move the hearings up so that they could vet the budget before we make a decision on override. That's all I was saying.
That's not the way the process works. It's not the way the process has ever worked. And to me, that is asking them to do additional work before the fact. So, with that, I think at this point we'll open it up to public comment. Will, can you keep track? We're gonna limit everybody to 3 minutes.
Sure. Just so you know, you do have one hand on Zoom as well.
All right, let's start with Zoom then.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Kusher.
Yep. It's Dan Kusher, 79 Keith Hill Road. I'm a member of the Finance Committee. Speaking for myself, I want to echo what Greg said and expand a little bit. The override is a cap, and addressing what Ms. Foley was saying about needing to have precise numbers before you can go out and ask voters to support it. You really don't, because if a number is chosen for the override, and then we find out that actually Jay was able to squeeze a little bit more, and next year's school budget is a little bit smaller, you can then go back to those same voters and say, actually, we have an update. We're going to spend less of it next year, which means it can stretch a bit longer, or it can compensate for an unexpected expense in years 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't need to have the exact numbers before you go out and tell people, this is what we need. We strongly believe it's going to be this amount. We're still working out some of the finer details. It feels to me like there's just this inexplicable need to delay from certain members. And it's infuriating, because we know today that we are going to need an override, or we will have extreme cuts. We can say today, each one of you can say, whether or not you want that decision made by the voters or if you want to make it yourselves. We don't need to delay that decision. I really would like you to make that decision tonight. Thank you.
Just point of order, I didn't request specific numbers.
Excuse me?
Oh, sorry, that was just reference to Dan.
Okay. Amy Marr, 36 Ferry Street, South Grafton. I'm here representing no one anymore, but I am a member of a former member of the school committee, and I too was in this room last year. I too am frustrated. It is not the select board's job to protect the people of Grafton by not giving them the vote. It's not your job. It's your job to say, we need more revenue, as Ms. Foley pointed out. We're not able to find that revenue anywhere else but the taxpayers. That's the God's honest truth. The state isn't coming to save us. The feds are certainly not coming to save us. We need to generate that revenue here in the town. We're not magically going to open up a bunch of businesses next month that are going to foot this bill. The taxpayers need to make that decision. Either they're going to give us the additional revenue that we need to run the school system and the town, or they're going to vote on a budget where there are cuts. I don't understand why we're waiting. If time is such a factor here, don't you want to give the taxpayers time to be educated and understand the issues, to be able to participate in the public hearings, which nobody ever comes to, by the way? Clearly. Clearly, nobody comes to those meetings. I've sat through 6 of them. No one comes to the school public hearings, except Andy Jefferson, Colleen Roy, and the school committee every year. What?
I used to go before I was.
Okay, and Christy did when she was running. My point is this. If we need the public to understand the problem, we need to give them a reason to educate themselves. We need to put an override on the ballot, and I say that on behalf of the taxpayers. Give us a choice. Lay out the problem, lay out the vision. We need the choice. It's time. We said last year was the last year. This is it. The well is dry. The revolvers are empty. Jay is working his butt off trying to find this money. We're going to go line by line just like we do every year, Craig, I assure you. I've sat through these meetings. Please make the decision to give the taxpayers the choice.
Any other public comment?
You do have 2 hands on Zoom.
Okay, let's take the first one.
Speaking into a microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, it's Angelina Correa. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm also just speaking on my own behalf. I want to say thank you, Andy, for some out-of-the-box thinking tonight with the CPA, CPC, whatever it is, 1.5%. That was a good thought. I just had a question for a point of clarification. Evan, what direction did you glean from this meeting? I know that you said you were ready to move forward, and you knew what you needed to do, and I am unclear. So I was hoping you could just give us some clarification on what you see the direction as being.
Sure. So for the time being, or at least before I ran to the restroom, I was hoping I come back, everybody was gone, but you're still here. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. So my takeaway from this is to continue working on a reduction budget. We're going to need that one way or another, even if we do go for an override. So we have to build that anyways. So we're going to continue to figure out what that looks like and refine some of that. And my mission is to protect public safety. So that's fire, PD, and DPW. We're going to leave that one fire position in there for now as we go through this exercise. And that really doesn't impact, or at least my work, and I think Jay's work in the next couple weeks isn't really impacted by whether or not the board is going to put an override on or not. We still have to do all of that work anyways to create the baseline budget, which I need to present to the town or to the select board prior to February 10th is the exact date. And then, the rest of that's the contingent budget is what restores it to level services.
So is that what the board intended, to protect public safety? So what I'm hearing is that public safety is protected, everything else is fair game? Like, is that what you guys want to be the charge for reducing the budget? Because that says to me schools are going to take a big hit. So that makes me concerned.
I don't think I took that same message away. I was going to leave the schools where I'm not going to leave the schools. Sorry. Jay and I would continue our work on this, and the schools would stay where they are. And my reduction budget is the one that needs to be refined and make sure I protect those three areas.
We all agree that's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say, Angelina, the select board, that's the part that we oversee, right? Is what Evan is speaking to. And the school committee is working with Jay. And then obviously we all come together, it's one big fat budget, but what the select board has jurisdiction over, so to speak, are some of those areas that you mentioned.
But we, just again, saying out loud, we will not be looking to the schools to reduce their budget any further. The number that, what they are currently presenting is what we are willing to accept.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I guess,
Yeah, I mean, you could tell us that we don't have to reduce as much, right?
Right.
I mean, you could protect the schools more.
What I heard from Jay and Evan is they have enough information from us at this point, am I correct or no, to at least proceed for the next couple of weeks while we get some more numbers coming in from the state, we refine some numbers on your end.
Yep, I agree with that.
Does that answer your question, Angelina? Was there a follow-up?
I mean, it doesn't, because I feel like when finance committee asked Evan, and he addressed this at the beginning of the meeting, how he came up with the split and what was reduced from the town versus what was reduced from the schools. It was, they kind of worked together, but there was no clear reason why this much came out of here and this much came out of here. So when you say, like these cuts that are being proposed to the school are going to, when dialed forward a little bit, is going to make the school department dysfunctional. And I don't believe that the select board, and I could be incorrect about this, but I think the direction of we're short 1.4 million at this point, it might be 1.1, it might be 1.6, who knows, but we're short this amount of money. And Craig says protect public safety, and everybody seems to agree with that. And so public safety is not going to get touched, but it's going to come out of everywhere else, including the schools. And I don't agree that you guys can't also protect the schools. So I guess that's where I'm concerned here about how the conversation is moving.
Mr. Jefferson? I have a question, because I feel as though the reason that the split is made the way that it has been made, and correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, but it seems as though we're asking for $4 million of new money, $3 million of which is coming out of the school. And that so our deficit is 1.4, the school would have 75% of that, is the way that I figured that you figured this, because those are the numbers that work out the way that they work out for you. So is that the way that you came up with these numbers?
No.
Okay. Just by chance we had the same.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the conversation was, and I said this at FinCom last week, the conversation was Jay needs a starting point and I need a starting point. So Jay looked at $1 million, I looked at 4, whatever the delta is.
When we talked about staffing, because the great majority is going to be staffing on for both of us. I think the schools make up about 76% of the staffing in town. So if you think of that as 75%.
So we had the same number.
Yeah,
Just a
we
different
kind of
mechanism
were like,
around
that's
there.
around 15 for us,
we
around 5
didn't pick
for
a
you.
percentage. It was just, we know that, again, if I'm supposed to cut by 484 and Jay's supposed to cut by $1 million, but it works better if Jay's at 950 and we're a little bit more, because that's the way the whole positions fall. Or we can save this program on either side of the house. We're gonna work together to figure out what that delta is. But it was really just we needed a starting point. Otherwise, it's just throwing darts at the wall. And
All right, I thought it was based on the new money because of how it worked out, just happened to work out to your thing. And I just have one other quick thing. When we're going over the school budget, one thing that I've noticed, which I hate, is that in the school budget, we don't have any sort of unclassified line. We don't have any sort of buffer line. And I don't know if that's something that we need to ask, who we ask to ensure that we have some
I don't
sort
think
of,
you need it.
You don't think we need any sort of line for that? Like
No, because the way that it works is as soon as the budget becomes live, right? So July 1, you as a school district can move that money however you want. Whereas the town can't do that. That's why we have such structured lines. So we cannot cross the salary expense barrier without coming back to the select board and having them vote to do a transfer.
Well, it's the same for the school committee. We're supposed to be voting on transfers.
Yeah, yes, but you get a conglomerate budget, right? It's the lament of every town administrator in the state of Massachusetts, because we are hemmed in by every single line, and the school department is not. So that's why we carry that unclassified line. Plus, the unclassified is really a designation by GFOA. Is it GFOA or is it the other one?
It's all our indirect costs.
Okay.
Unclassified.
Yeah, I know you're on.
So that's why it works that way. I mean, you could add any line you want into the budget, but at the end of the day, you get a lump and we get.
I know,
hemmed in.
but we still have to approve any transfer in front of the committee as well.
Angeline, I just wanted to address your question a little bit too. I hope it's clear that I want to defend the school budget as well, but I'm more concerned about the school budget over time, and that to me is the approach is the override. So that's what I'm sort of pushing for. Advocacy and sort of the champion of the school budget is the school committee and the superintendent. So that's where that comes from. When we talk about our priorities, really, we're trying to give direction to Evan, who's got to look at all of the municipal departments other than the schools. So really, that's where the public safety support came from, I believe. So just want to clarify that a little bit.
Someone else on Zoom?
Nobody else on Zoom at the
No
moment.
additional hands? Okay, we had one in the back first.
Hi, Bob Carroll, 72 East Street. Just want to say this is hard, and I recognize, all the effort everyone's putting into this. I know, especially school committee volunteers, right, and not your day job. So I just want to call that out and recognize this. But I guess for me, it's more of a question than a statement. So I don't know what people are reviewing, because I did go. And I downloaded the PDF. It's out there on the webpage. But I go into ClearGov and I see Evan. I see all your stuff. I don't know if it's right or not, but the numbers are there.
Probably about a 70% chance it's right.
At least they're numbers.
Actually, Mary did that, so it's right.
Okay, good for you, Mary. So when do we see those actual numbers? Because the budget numbers that I see, they're stuff mashed together. There's no GL strings. It's very hard and cryptic to try to decipher. And I get, you're doing essentially forecasting in my world.
Sure.
That you're just applying the 5% or 9% or whatever. But what's the timeline when we can start seeing that stuff?
Going back to what we talked about earlier, I'm hoping, I haven't obviously talked to the school committee about it. We've already been working on that. We've tried to speed it up given that we're having these discussions. So I'm gonna guess early February.
Okay.
And the only reason we don't do ClearGov is that it costs over $40,000 for the school department to do that for that module every year, and we were just trying to spend.
I did see on the Muni side. Evan, you keep me honest. Don't we pay like $50 for that for ClearGov?
With the modules that we have, yeah, but that's, some of that impacts both sides because we have open checkbook, we have, cash book, we have a couple of other things that capital planning is part of that, project pages, that kind of stuff, so.
Right.
So
But,
that's the only reason we don't use it.
But
is
I,
the cost.
when I look at like Westboro, right, and I look at Grafton, I can look at the two PDFs and tell that they were generated by the same, so the data is there.
Yep.
And it was obviously made, the budget book was made by ClearGov. So why isn't it on the web?
Is that accurate?
Mary and I were talking about this earlier. If she gives the school access as a department, are you trying to look at the town and the school you trying to look at the school budget on ClearGov?
Well,
what you're trying to
that's
do?
it would be nice to have it all in one, but yeah, that's what I was looking to do. I see the the summary numbers.
Right, that's exactly right. We process ours, put it in
The summary.
town side,
Right,
put it in, but
but
that
all the
module,
GL strings, all that other stuff, none
correct.
of that's there.
But we can certainly work
Yeah, and I'm
to get
curious
you
to
that.
see how Westboro's doing that, so I can.
Well, I saw the budget book, so
Okay.
I didn't go and check all the line items in
Okay.
Westboro, but I'm like, okay, I see, this looks almost identical to Grafton, so obviously these guys are all using the same tools
Yeah.
to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing is, I think Emery, you brought it up with the transportation. I talked to, people in my network, other parents, public school, and they're like, wow, your kids get bus service to sports? That went away 10 years ago in our district. And then, other things like one-to-one computing, like they have to pay some of the costs for the assets for the, I guess you guys use iPads and Chromebooks or Pixelbooks, so they have to pay some of that. So are we looking at any, where parents have to kick in?
The technology you can't. You can't have a fee for that. Schools did try it a few years ago. Shrewsbury, for example, and it's simply not allowed now.
ACLU issue.
I don't remember what the reason was, but we can't. And other than athletic fees, that's what we're talking about now. I'm not aware of any district where they're not taking transportation to athletic events. I'm happy to talk to you about that offline. I don't know
Sure.
how that would work, but talk about
Well, the
a
parents
change
end
in
up driving them,
service.
or it's like
Yeah,
the
which I
fees
can't
for
even.
for the bus, in the morning kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, and then this is more strategic and long-term, right? I guess I would challenge, the board and the schools to also look at, and I see, it's easy enough to do this with AI, is go search for leading best practices where they're doing shared services models, like for, HR, for custodial services, IT, finance, right, between the community side and the school side. Again, thinking out of the box and being more creative. And then also, and I know in the conversation about the position for the firefighter, more fees, raising fees, again, looking to bring in more money into the district so then taxpayers, don't have to pay as much. So I think that's pretty much about it that I had to say. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Colleen Roy, 53 Elmwood Street. And my question's for the board. I heard, are you guys going to meet next week or not? And that's because Jay and Evan have their direction and they're going to keep working on FY27, and that's all well and good. But the select board still has to decide whether or not they're going to ask for an override, and that really is separate from FY27. An override's going to build capacity, and it's crystal clear we need capacity for next year. You're not going to get a line by line for FY28 or 29. And you have to decide how much capacity you want to offer to taxpayers. And you can really be working on that next week, regardless of how FY27 is going to shape up. If you want to say 1.4 is the capacity we need for next year, and they only use 1.2, bully for you, you got 200,000 for FY28. It's just about capacity, and that's something you guys can really be discussing next week, and I hope you do. Thank you.
Yeah, we're meeting next week.
Yep.
It's our normal meeting.
Yep, and we have added a standing agenda item for the budget, just to encompass some of those things that may come up. Anybody else?
I had no intention of doing this when I showed up tonight, so please forgive me. My name is James Brand. I'm a resident at 37 Fisherville Terrace, South Grafton. I wanted to just talk a little bit because I'm having a little deja vu. Because last year we had a very similar process, and that ended in cutting 6.5 positions around then. But preliminarily, it was around 11 or 12. And it's public knowledge my position was one of the ones that was going to be cut. And through the work of Dr. Cummings and Evan, they came together and magically found $600,000 to save my job. So I want to thank you for that. And that's not going to be the case again. That's not going to happen. That money doesn't exist. Last year was a unicorn. And so I'm listening, and there's a lot of talk about the current time in this year and numbers. And I was sitting back there, so I couldn't really see who said it, but I loved what someone said over here about focusing on the future and the people. Because Jay is right. With the amount of funding we get from the state, Grafton Schools should be a shipwreck. And we do more with less, better than almost any surrounding town that I can think of. And there's lots of important work that's going on in our schools. I'm not sure you realize what an asset you have in the music program. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I'm a middle school chorus teacher. You have a high school music teacher that's been there nearly, if not over 30 years. You have another middle school music teacher that's been there over 20 years. So there's a sense of stability and a program. I would love just a chance to try to join that lineage and be here for that. It breaks my heart because I have 7th graders that talk about what they want to do next year. And they haven't released, the numbers for the reduction budget. But if I was on the list last year and you're talking about cutting 18 positions district-wide, I have a hard time believing I may not be on that again, right? So just thinking about that, it breaks your heart to hear some of my students talk about the future and what they want to do next year and have me worry I may not be here to see that, right? I want to be here in town. I actually bought a property this summer in Grafton with the idea that I'll be here as long as you have me. So I'm going to say this knowing that I have no control over this. I don't want to leave. Please don't make me. Please give the residents of Grafton a chance to stick up for educators like myself that may not have a chance otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, 25 years. 26, Mr. Chair, you do have a hand on Zoom.
Okay, let's take the hand on Zoom.
Hi, Dan Kusher again. I'll be quick since I'm second time. I just wanted to agree with the request that the select board try to protect the schools more than is currently under discussion. To say that that public safety and DPW are off limits, to me, that's as a resident, as a taxpayer, I would like to see those at least be considered. I believe we've added, is it 6 police officers?
4.
To the, I think Evan might have corrected me, but I didn't hear it.
4.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me again. It's 4.
Okay, it's 4.
Yeah.
All right. Those were not things that we talked about in 2020 when we were discussing the previous override, but we've added those. And I would like to see that at least considered as something to, go back at least a little bit in the direction of where we were in 2020, if we're going to be making these massive cuts to the schools' services. So to hear that there are things that are off limits is something that bothers me. Thank you.
Any other? Yep.
Hello, Lucky Masumba, 10 Sunnyside Terrace. I didn't come here to speak either, but what was your name?
James Brion.
Hey, James. Yeah. I don't like taxes at all. I don't like mine going up. I don't like paying for them. I have all kinds of notes on my phone about, you know, a use case for me and older people. But you come here to hear the debate and hear different people's opinions. I did go to the school committee meeting the other day, by the way, just so you know, to learn some stuff, learn some interesting things. Kind of shocked that, you know, poor Dr. Cummings is doing without. We need to work on that a little bit. But honestly, I came here to be like, I'm not voting for an override at all, ever. Loved my music teacher in 6th grade. So you literally just changed my mind for those types of things because of that. So I just want to come and say that I'm still against taxes. I'm on the board of assessors, but I'm not here for that. I'm here to learn
It's
about
like
the
charging taxes.
I'm
not-
here to. I'm sneakily on the board for a reason. But it really is kind of like that old saying, like the immovable object meeting an immovable force, which is a paradox. It's a real tough one. It's a real tough one. And I want to thank the committee, the school committee, the select board, town administrator, Dr. Cummings, and actually all the people here. I'm not running for office, not yet. But no, it's great. Like, you know, the time and everything else, but literally your comments right there, man, pretty damn awesome. I love that. I still remember a song that we sang in 6th grade. It was for graduation. I'm not kidding. It's like, you know. So anyway, I just want to thank all of you for your hard work. I'm not decided yet, but the other thing I did just look up that might be an interesting tool, and I think you're able to do it, is to kind of use a polling system just to see where people stand, kind of sentiment-wise, and you know, it's just you know, it's all about data these days, you know, so I think that might be an interesting thing to try and take, so we don't waste a lot of people's time. Mr. Marr, all these people, like, if it's 70, 30, 90, 10, like, oh, this isn't going to pass, why are we wasting our time with this? But then also you can get people like you to maybe change minds and hearts, so anyway, thank you, have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else?
We all want to hear the song.
Well,
now. I feel
we limit comment to 3 minutes. Any additional hands on Zoom?
You have no further hands on Zoom.
Okay. I feel like everybody has had a pretty good chance to express himself at this point. So barring objection, I think we can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
School committee, motion to adjourn.
Motion, I make, so moved.
Okay, second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you all for coming in tonight. Really appreciate it.